Scott, thank you so much for coming back. It's just really great to see you again.
Yeah, feels good to follow up and play a little bit.
Yeah, great songs too.
Thanks, man.
So much has happened since we met last time, right? And particularly losing Gregg. Have you even had a chance to really grieve?
Well, I mean, the one thing about the process of losing someone when you're a musician is that, you know, music is such a, if you're doing it right, and you're doing it for the right reasons, which I hope I am, I try to anyway, it's a real comfort for your soul to play music. And I think, you know, I was a fan of music first. I mean, you know, records changed my life and helped me process even, you know, my childhood and all the aspects of being a human being throughout my life. So, and Gregg, of course, you know, I was with him almost a decade, and I knew of his terminal diagnosis for at least 3 years or so before he actually passed away. So I was already in process, and the last time I saw you, I had just gotten back from a trip to his house. I think he passed away a couple weeks later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I actually got to spend a couple days with him at his house, where I got to say my piece with him, and obviously we got to complete this record, Southern Blood, and finished composing 2 songs. One is on Southern Blood, It's My Only True Friend. The other one is going to be a bonus track on my record. It's coming out next year.
Right.
So we really, you know, did the best we could with the time that he had left, and I think that him and I had a lot more chances than most people get to kind of properly close the chapter of life together in this realm, you know. So I don't really have any regrets about the time I spent, and I think he actually, from what I understand, and this has all been coming out recently, I've been finding out that the doctors were telling him, you know, he had a year to live, and he ended up getting 5 extra years or something. So that was something I had never heard until recently on these press tours I've been doing with his manager, Michael Lehman, and Shank Middleton, his friend who is always on the road with us. You know, they had kind of the inside scoop on that. And so even with my knowledge of his terminal diagnosis, I'd never realized how much road he got out of it. You know, he really made the most of it. And it's also, you know, it's, and again, as a musician, you know, it's fuel. You know, the loss and the grief, you know, you can process it one of 2 ways. You know, you can use it,
right,
you know, to pack up your toys and go home, or you can use it as fuel to be better and say, look, you know, the last couple of years have been beyond brutal. I mean, B.B. King, Prince, David Bowie, you know, Gregg is Butch, of course. Yeah. So Gregg and Butch, you know, from the Allmans family, I mean, they're right in that realm of great, you know, creators. And Gregg in particular, you know, Gregg had such an impact also as a songwriter. Not only, he was such a great musician and vocalist. I always call him the Frank Sinatra of rock and roll, you know.
Yeah.
I think he had the best voice in the history of rock, you know. But as a songwriter also, I feel like he was in league with those other greats that we've recently lost.
Yeah. Hey, when you mentioned his phrasing the last time you were here, and I was just listening to some of his stuff recently, and some of the simplest words that we use every day, just the way he phrases them just makes them sound so beautiful, perfect for what he's trying to say. Such a gift.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much from him on all fronts, and to address, you know, his interpreter as a singer, I mean, Gregg was like a Nina Simone or a Frank Sinatra, you know. He would, or a Sam Cooke, you know, or a Ray Charles. I mean, he would inhabit a song and take it over. But he was also very wise. At least this was my years with him. I don't know if he always had this quality when he was young or not, but in the last 9 or so years of his life, he was very wise in terms of what fit his voice, lyrically, melodically, arrangement-wise, tempo-wise, key-wise. He was acutely in tune with his instrument as a vocalist, like I've never seen. And I've worked with a number of really wonderful singers. I've been very lucky to have had those experiences, but he had an acute sense of what worked and what didn't. And boy, you better be ready when he was ready to sing, man, in the studio or on stage. Like when you were going into a situation, now rehearsing was one thing. You know, he would try things. He would try songs. He would play with phrasing. He would sometimes have to save his voice because of all the work we were doing. But when it came to the red light was on or we were on stage, boy, you better be ready. I mean, he never missed. It was just unbelievable, like the power and energy and the mastery of his craft of being a singer and a performer. It was really amazing to watch on a regular basis.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, we mentioned earlier, you know, a list of some of the guitar players that he, you know, obviously his brother Dwayne, Dickie, Dan Toller, Warren, Derek, Jack Pearson, all these, you know, great masters of the guitar, and you're right there. How privileged do you feel having had the relationship that you've been able to have with him and be able to get at that time in his life what he had to give and for you as a musician?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a privilege to be a musician, period, right? I mean, this job, I mean, it's not even really a job, it's more of a calling. I've known I wanted to be a musician since I was about 10. And it was first because of my father, because he's a guitar player, singer, and I was lucky in that, you know, he taught me Jimmy Reed and Chuck Berry right away. So as a small kid, well before my teens, I was obsessed with Chuck Berry and Jimmy Reed. And then, to be honest with you, man, there was one year, and I can't remember how old I was, between 10 and 12, I had a couple life-changing experiences with music, but there was one year where I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan and I saw the Allman Brothers live. It was my first Allman Brothers concert.
That'll wake you up.
Well, I saw those two acts on stage, and particularly the Allman Brothers, just because of the amount of the songs and Gregg that I tuned into. But obviously the two acts, I mean, it was Warren Haynes, Dickie Betts, and then seeing Stevie Ray. When I saw those guys on stage, and they were on VH1 all the time back, we all forget, like, there was a point where this would have been the early 90s, 89 through the early 90s, when I was seeing these guys on TV and live. This was very profitable music. I mean, you had Stevie Ray, Robert Cray, Bonnie Raitt, Dr. John, the Allman Brothers. They were all in regular rotation on VH1. They were doing big shed concerts together. They were taking Bobby Bland and B.B. King out with them, and Little Milton.
Yeah.
That was the first time I was exposed to all that stuff
right.
Live. But particularly the Allman Brothers, for me, and seeing Warren and Dickie and Gregg in particular as a singer and guitar player and songwriter, even at that early age, I was starting to mess around with singing and writing songs, even though I was chiefly a guitar player. To me, that gave me license to do what I wanted to do, because I could hear in their music that they were using blues and soul and jazz as the bedrock, and then they were creating rock and roll.
Right.
So to me, that was my permission to play blues and jazz and soul music.
Right.
You know, that's what I call real rock and roll music. And so, you know, fast forward to 2008 when I got to meet him, and we hit it off right away, Gregg and I, with our love for the blues. But, you know, to go back to your original question about, you know, the lineage of all the great guitar players, I mean, I grew up studying all those guitar players with the exception of Jack Pearson, unfortunately, because he's become like basically one of my favorite guitar players of all time. And I got to know him through Gregg. I didn't even know of his work with the Allman Brothers until I met Gregg, and Gregg had mentioned his name, and I ended up checking out YouTube clips of him, and I immediately fell in love with everything about his style. He's a wonderful singer and songwriter too, which a lot of people don't know that about him, and they should. He's I mean, if I was backed into a corner, I'd have to say my two favorite living guitar players are either him or Ronnie Earl. I can't really decide. They're my two favorites, you know. They just never, ever, ever, ever miss. They are just pure conduits, you know. But it's an honor to have served in the chair next to him. You know, Gregg and I had some things in common in terms of our approach to and love for music. And that energy and that enthusiasm and passion and humility towards the musical masters is something that Dwayne Allman had as well. And I think Gregg and I really, our greatest bond was that, and I think that's interesting because, we both learned the same thing on the guitar first. The first thing I learned was Jimmy Reed's Baby What You Want Me to Do rhythm pattern, which he used on all his songs, of course. But there was that one particular song, and that particular song was the first song that Gregg learned to play on the guitar. And that shows you that there's, that's more understanding the journeyman side that is so important to being a musician and being a singer and a songwriter. And it's so lacking. Gregg and I, even though, he's basically, he's my father's age. And he's a mentor to me. But at the same time, we had a very similar musical manifesto, and he had gotten some of that from his brother as well. There of all the guitar players in the world, I'm one of them.
That's an honor, right?
There are many guitar players, and there are many guitar players who would have done and did do at times an amazing job on that gig. I mean, before I got on the gig, guys like Robin Ford did the gig for a little while, who's obviously a wonderful musician, and I have recordings of him doing the gig, and it was awesome. I believe Val McCallum from Jackson Brown's band did it. I mean, there were incredible guitar players, even who are sort of unsung in that respect in the Gregg Allman band. Man, I had been studying for the gig my whole life. I mean, it was like going back into the basement. I didn't even have to study any of the music to play the gig. I walked right into the gig and I knew every note. So I had an advantage that way. But it was all out of a pure love. It was a pure passion for music and a pure admiration of Gregg. And I think that he felt those two things from me. And I tried to just be a humble student of what he does.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this album, Southern Blood, man, it is a masterpiece. It's brilliant, really.
Thanks. I mean, it came together. It was in the works forever, and it was everything about it was last minute.
Yeah, but it seems like everything fell in place.
It did.
There's really nothing. There's not a note out of whack.
It's a trust fall, man. I mean, a lot of people I've been doing press for the record because I wrote 2 songs on the record and did the guitar work. Mm-hmm. And I was involved in the pre-production as well. I mean, Gregg had me involved in all his meetings with Don and picking the songs and stuff. And I was really thrilled that Gregg, granted me that level of access to the process. There were a lot of things I wanted to do with Gregg on this record that we couldn't because of scheduling and timing and his health, and there were so many elements. So, to a certain extent, it's like I don't want to let people in on the sausage making process,
Right.
But there were some things, there were some collaborations, and there were some other songwriting things that were happening in process when we had to pull the trigger to make the record.
Right.
So, I had that approach to it for a while, and then Gregg lost his ability to sing for the last about whatever it was, the last 8 months of his life.
Right.
His vocal cord had become paralyzed, which is, the worst thing you can do to a singer.
Yeah.
So he was unable to do his overdubs. And because of that, honestly, there was a point where I was like, I wonder if this thing will even see the light of day. His vocals are all the vocals he sang on the floor. There were 2 other instrumental tracks we cut that he never did any vocals on. We did Freddie King's Pack It Up, smoking track. And we did Leon Russell's Hummingbird. And he never cut a single word on those that I know of. I think Hummingbird might have had a scratch vocal, but it wasn't usable. Pack It Up, there was nothing. I sang the guide vocal on that. So basically, I wasn't sure what they were going to do. And then Don was, he found a way, because that's what he does. He found a way to make it work.
Well, the song really that's getting the most attention, I mean, the album is great from top to bottom, but is your song, My Only True Friend. How did you come up with those? I mean, it's almost eerie. in a good way, you know. But it's like it's so close to such a sensitive issue, but it's really expressive.
Well, the process of writing that song is, I mean, basically, it's the story of writing that song is definitely the most significant part of the collaboration I got to have with Gregg. And it was eerie is a good word because it was eerie for me writing it. And I never got to tell Gregg this story, mainly because the song was inspired by a dream I had about him and Dwayne having a conversation. And I never told him that, even in his last days, because I was afraid it would spook him about the song. But basically what happened is a few years ago, I was doing a writing session with him at his house, and we had a couple things going that were really good. But one night we stayed up late telling road stories. And, I was staying in this bedroom in Gregg's house in Savannah, and he used to live on this boat slip, sort of in the, it was a very Delta type environment, in the swamp. And we were up late telling stories on the boat slip and stuff and getting high. And I went back to sleep in the room I was in the house, and it was a room that had pictures of all over the room of Dwayne and Gregg and like their uniforms, at school and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it might have been the room his mom used to sleep in when she stayed there. For some reason, I was staying in there. So I went to sleep, and like at dawn, I woke up and I had one of those dreams that's like it's like a movie you're watching, and it's so vivid when you wake up. And when I woke up, I had the 3 lines that are the first verse of the song and the hook of the song. So I ran downstairs, I grabbed the pen and paper and the acoustic guitar I already had sitting out on the couch from the night before, and Gregg was sleeping. It was like 5, 6 in the morning. So I ran out on the porch, and I was sitting out on the porch with the sun coming up over the boat slip. And I had scrawled down the 3 lines from the dream. I'm groggy as hell and scrolling down the lines, and I have my guitar, and I started playing. And the first thing I hit was that A minor 7, and I started sliding it around, and that's the intro to the song as you hear it.
Yeah.
Right there. And then I hit that B minor, and I started singing. And that bang, intro and first verse was right away. It was like pure inspiration. Boom. And then I had, you and I both know The Road's Our Only True Friend, and I had some chords for it, but I had no way to get to it yet. So I sat there, and I was like trying to take in the whole moment. I was definitely realizing like, okay, this is going to be good. This feels right.
Yeah.
And a side note to this is, now there were a lot of different ideas for the album cover, right? Southern Blood. But, he had the blood painting, which is inside now. He wanted that on the cover, and then they changed it to like some generic picture of him, and nobody liked it. And then I got my copy of the record at the first press event, and when I saw it, I almost lost it, because the cover of the record is exactly what I was looking at when I wrote that fucking song.
When you were sitting out on the porch. Wow.
It's his boat slip with the sun
slip,
coming
yeah.
up over it.
Wow.
It's crazy. So when Gregg woke up that morning, many hours later, of course, he was a late riser. Before he could eat or have his coffee, I grabbed him and I sat him down and I said, I have to play this for you. And I played him, like I said, exactly as you hear on the record, the intro and the first verse. And he flipped out. He was like, this is it. This is the song. And this songwriting process went on for 3 years. In the middle of all that, like a few months later, okay, they were doing the Beacon, their second run. I went to his hotel room. And so this is a few months after the start of the song. And I sat down with him, and he told me he was going to die. And I said, well, Gregg, you want to write songs today in your hotel on your day off? I said, we can just hang out. We don't have to like work. And he's like, no, it's important we work. So that's when I pulled out our lyric sheets, and I still have these. And we had hand-scrawled lyrics everywhere. And we'd had a pre-chorus that we'd designed over the last few months, and he scratched it out. And that's when he wrote, I hope you're haunted by the music of my soul when I'm gone.
Wow.
Was right there, right when he told me that. And actually that day was the first day he played me Once I Was all the way through also.
That gives you chills just listening to him say that, knowing what's at stake, and now,
Well, I mean, I saw him write it on that piece of paper, and I'll tell you, man, it's a moment I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
Watching him write that on that piece of paper. Because that was him, that was when the song changed. I said, all right, I had thought of the song as a conversation from Dwayne to Gregg and then from Gregg to Dwayne, because Gregg and I had crafted that second verse, about being on the road. And then I think he kind of made that. It's interesting because I saw the song as a conversation between Dwayne and Gregg about, being musicians and passing on and everything. But then once Gregg came up with that pre-chorus, I said, oh, I see what this song is now. This song is this is his goodbye letter to his friends and his family and his wife and his fans. That's what this is going to be. So then I understood that's where we were going. And this was unspoken, but honestly, that day in that hotel room, it didn't have to be. All right, so the third part of the story is we get in the studio. We're at Fame in Muscle Shoals. We're cutting songs. We've cut a few songs. It's going well. We've not cut My Only True Friend. One day I go to Gregg. I go, Gregg, we're going to cut this song, right? Because he wouldn't play it live. We played it live once. But he was always like, look, there's something missing. There's something missing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Let's move this chord around. Let's move this word around. Let's do this. Let's do that. He was constantly fussing with the song. And I was getting frustrated, to be honest with you. And I'm at the session. I'm going, if we don't cut this fucking song this week, it's not going to happen. There's going to be zero Gregg Allman composition on this record because everything else is covers. So Mark Quinones, percussionist in the Gregg Allman Band, obviously 25 years with the Allman Brothers, in his infinite wisdom, because he does have infinite wisdom, he came to me and he said, Scott, you need to write a third verse for this song. And I said, all right. So went to my hotel in Muscle Shoals that night after the session of whatever we cut that day. And I stayed up all night writing down ideas. And I never work that way. And that's when I came up with the third verse, which to me now as a songwriter, it's kind of funny when I look at the third verse because I think of it as the third verse is still on and on I roam, feels like home's just around the bend. I've got so much left to give, but I'm running out of time, my friend. I could have been writing that about, are we going to get this fucking song on the record or what? Because that was my energy at that point.
Yeah.
But I knew that he was writing it as his goodbye, so I was kind of able to channel my own frustration with the energy that he needed to feel like the song was finished.
Right.
And that was where my head was. And I was clear enough to know that at this point. Because at this point, I'm just trying to fucking give birth to this song. This is like 3 days in labor, okay?
Right.
So I get to the studio the next day, and I hand him a piece of paper with all the lyrics to the song where I have handwritten in the third verse. And he goes, okay, that's it. Let's do it. That was the day we cut it. So probably the second or third time he ever sang those words is what's on the record for the third verse. It didn't exist until the day of the recording.
So such a beautiful composition is written that you wrote, and it's totally outside the box of your process of writing a song.
Well, the last portion was, but it was really, there's two sides really to being creative. There's the pure inspiration, like the way Gregg wrote Melissa or Dreams, right? He always talks, I would always hear him tell those stories in interviews because I was with him a lot of the time when he was doing that stuff. And, Melissa, he hears the woman, running after her daughter.
Yeah.
And then boom, he's got the song. And then Dreams, like he's learning to play the organ and he just ends up with Dreams, right? It was like on a flash. And the other way to write songs is to carve away and carve away and carve away. And My Only True Friend, that song was a motherfucker. It took both processes from two songwriters to get it to where he was happy with it. Because that song was all about him being happy with it because he was very gun shy about writing in his later years. It happens a lot to artists. He would talk to me about it himself. He was having less blind inspiration. There were less lightning bolt moments. Yeah. I think because his life was so taken up with his health and the Allman Brothers Band, and there were so many outside forces and pressures, and I think he had also come into his own as a vocalist in his later years to the point where his vocals became such a pure conduit of expression for him. I think songwriting was less important to him in a way, but anyway, we worked like hell on that song, so I'm glad you like it.
Dude, it's unbelievable. And you would think, it's funny that you just said that. Well, not funny, but ironic, I guess, because it seems like such a heartfelt body of work, all the songs, the choices that he would be into the message that he's given out. And you say he's a little gun shy in the latter years, you wouldn't get it from, I wouldn't think that at all from the way this album came out.
Well, again, you got to be careful about talking about making the sausage, but that's
Yeah. No.
part of the process. I mean, it's, the other thing too is like the making of the record. A lot of people have been asking me like, did it feel like you were making his final goodbye when you were in the studio? And it's like, no, that's not how music works.
Right.
Gregg loved his band. He loved his live band. And, we had a rhythm together. And, Don was, to his credit, he picked up on that and he let us be ourselves. And then he guided us when he needed to, which is really exactly what we needed. And the vibe in the studio was love between each other as musicians and human beings, and just having a good time. Every record I've made that I am proud of is like, making great records is what you do while you're waiting for barbecue. That's basically what it is. If you go in the studio and you're like, I'm going to change the world, this song is important, you're not going to make a good record.
Right.
It's not going to happen. It's about the hang. It's about everybody feeling comfortable. And it's about expressing the joy and love for music. And the pain and the heartache and the scream into the void, that's when you're jamming together.
Right.
And once the music stops, it's all laughs. That's the way it's been with every great musician or band I've ever worked with, without exception. Without exception.
Yeah, you've worked with a lot of them too.
I've been lucky in that regard. And it's always the same vibe. And that's how I run my own band, because I've learned it from, the time I spent around, as a kid, like Hubert Sumlin and Buddy Miles and Luther Allison, and then, and the times I got to work with Levon Helm and, and obviously the Gregg Allman and the Allman's family and the Allman Brothers family. And, I've observed how they all work. I've talked to all of them about, Tommy Dowd and, Johnny Sandlin and other figures who were so pivotal.
Away too.
Yeah. They were also pivotal in helping them shape their sort of musical manifesto as well. And there's a lot of different forces at work there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been real busy as of late. I mean, obviously, getting out there, there's a lot of Allman Brothers events that you guys have been showcasing.
Yeah, it's
right?
been a year of, like you were saying before, like sort of grieving and celebrating the family, really, because we lost Butch so horribly and so tragically. And I know that really broke Gregg's heart, because it did occur, unfortunately, before he passed away. And I think it was really hard on him. So yeah, we've been doing some things for that. Next year we're going to try to also do some maybe just a couple targeted events. I've been very careful about what I've been accepting. My thing is I've been trying to mostly do things that involve the family or Michael Lehman, his manager, who he had entrusted with basically everything concerning him, or Bert Holman, the former Allman Brothers manager. I've been really keeping my involvement in tributes and stuff to them mostly. And then my other barometer is I just did something at Brooklyn Bowl for Live for Live Music where it involved Bernard Purdy. And I thought, I know how much Gregg and Butch loved Bernard. And when they called and they said, we have Bernard, I was like, I got to do this tribute to the Allman Brothers with him. It was an amazing night. It really was. I really felt like they were looking down on us on that gig. I got to be honest. It was an unbelievable show. So I've been trying to be, I'm a little wary of the tribute thing just in general, because it is so, it's so easy to market and is such low-hanging fruit usually for promoters these days and labels and stuff. It's like, and it's hard to, you have to really be careful about not being part of the problem in terms of, I think you have to weed it out and kind of figure out what makes sense and what's respectful and what's
absolutely,
and we, with what we've been doing in my band, we always involve the Big House Museum receives portions of the funds of the shows we do, and when they're tribute shows, and then we also have the Allman Lehman Scholarship Fund that they set up, which we also sometimes involve. Anytime we're using the Allman's name, we try to make sure that we are literally making sure that portions of the door go back to community organized things that promote the Allman Brothers and Gregg Allman sound and manifesto.
Right. So professionally, you've gone through such a significant happening, losing Gregg and the whole thing that we just spoke about. But you just had your second child.
Yeah. Lewin, yeah,
yeah.
he's 7 months old. Sorry.
So has your perspective changed? I mean, having gone through the loss and the birth, like also close. I mean, have you been able to think of things in those terms, or?
I mean, somewhat. It's just life, man. I mean, this is what it is. The main thing is that we just all make the most of every moment we got. I mean, the whole apple cart is upset right now in general.
Yeah.
So, where do you even start these days?
Yeah, right.
It's unbelievable. So, the only thing I can hope is that somehow we find a music community again, and we find a way to manifest the music as the zeitgeist of a positive change for humanity.
Well, I think, like we spoke about the last time, I think you're a big part of that. What's happening right now with the Brickyard Band.
Well, I appreciate that, man. We're still out here slugging
You're so
it out.
humble, man. I'm telling you, guys, kick it, man. Come on.
We have a lot of fun. We
Yeah.
we love to jam, and we I will say this about the band. I mean, we have an incredible chemistry, and I feel very lucky to know all those guys. When we can afford it, we're a 5-piece band with Tony Mason on drums, and then we have Moses Petru, who's our main drummer. But he also, when we have Tony, he plays percussion and keyboards and sings as well. Mm-hmm. And we do the double drumming thing with those two.
Right.
And then Brett Bass on bass, who I actually did get in Gregg Allman's band for his last couple tours. And Brett was wonderful. He was what we always needed in Gregg's band. Unfortunately,
cool.
he didn't have a long ride, but Gregg loved him. And then Eric Finland, our B3 player. And it's a lot of sound in that band. Eric sings backup. Moses Petru is a wonderful singer and songwriter, and he sings lead and backup as well. So we got 3-part harmony and 5 guys, and it's just a wall of sound.
Yeah.
And it's a band. It has real chemistry, and I've already got another record of material. I mean, I know I've got Saving Grace coming out next spring, which is we talked about that last time I was here, and that's a whole nother sort of experience, but I'm kind of looking at Saving Grace as my musical graduation record at this point. In terms,
you have another album basically done?
I already have one
beyond that.
basically written.
Wow.
I mean, it needs to be recorded at some point, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
You're a busy guy.
Jesse's going to kill me if I spend any more money on recording until we at least get Saving Grace out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to that point. We love sharing the music with people live, and we've had, there's in the South, there's a lot of love, and we're heading down there in October. We're going to have a show.
The show at the Cox Capitol you got coming?
So Thursday, October 12th, we're doing my band, Scott Sharrard and the Brickyard Band, are doing a very special show at the Cox Capitol. It's going to be a hell of a night of multimedia entertainment, because at 7 p.m., the director of this concert film, Scott Rosenbaum, he filmed me doing a tribute show to Gregg within a couple weeks of Gregg's passing at Rockwood Music Hall here in New York for a select 60 fans.
Right.
And it was a solo acoustic show where I told stories. And Scott did a multi-camera HD film and audio recording of this concert, and he's edited it together into a concert film. So we're going to premiere the concert film Thursday, October 12th at the Cox Capitol in Macon, Georgia. And then my band is going to play 2 sets of music, and the Big House Museum, which is the original house where the Allman Brothers were formed and where they lived during Dwayne's life and a couple years beyond. They're going to be receiving portions of the funds from the show, and they're also bringing down Dwayne Allman's 57 Gold Top Les Paul and one of his amplifiers for me to play through for the show.
Wow.
And I got to use that guitar on my record too, which I think we talked about last time.
Right.
So we're very excited about it, and it's our first time in Macon with my own band anyway. Obviously, I played there a lot with Gregg, and I've done a lot of events at the Big House. And I'm also going to be donating some of those lyric sheets of My Only True Friend, of the composition of it, to the Big House Museum.
Oh, that's
as well,
cool.
For them to display, because we're going to get. I'm lobbying to get a. Gregg Allman's bedroom is in the front of on the second floor of the building.
I've never been there.
Oh, you got to go.
I know.
It's a real pilgrimage. They do a wonderful job. And Richard Brent, who runs it now and takes care of the Gold Top and Dwayne Allman's Hummingbird acoustic, is wonderful, and he's been so supportive of
That's
us.
the guy that drove it down to you
Yeah,
in Memphis?
yeah,
or-
he's been an incredible
Muscle
supporter
Shoals,
of our band, and I really appreciate. He's a wonderful guy, and he knows everything about the Allman Brothers. I mean, their gear and their history, and he's an encyclopedia. So if you really want to get schooled, we'll hook you up with him, and he'll really give you the whole shot when you're down there. But Richard will be there with us that night too, and I think it's going to be a really, really special show. And of course, we're New York City locals, so we're always playing in the Northeast. And we've had some great shows. And we just did Jones Beach. We did the Gregg's Laid Back Festival with Steve Winwood and Jackson Brown last Sunday, and we had a great set there. And
you're going to do Laid Back down in Atlanta as well,
and
right?
we are, but that's actually going to be with the Gregg Allman Band. We're going to reform. Now would be Saturday, October 14th, I believe the date is. We're going to reform the Gregg Allman Band, the whole 8-piece band that played on Southern Blood. And we're going to perform Southern Blood from front to back.
Wow.
In Atlanta, Georgia. I forget the name of the venue. It's a shed down there. We're playing right before Leonard Skinner. And we're going to have, I brought on Junior Mack and Lamar Williams Jr., who are, of course, from the Allman Brothers family. Yeah. They're going to each sing a couple songs apiece, and I'm going to sing about the other half of the record. And then Devin Allman's going to do a couple of his dad's hits to close it out. So it's going to be a hell of a show.
Yeah,
it's a great week to be in Georgia, man.
Devin and Dwayne are doing something now, too, I read.
That's right. And Dwayne Betts, man, he sounds better than ever.
He can play, man. That kid's
sounds incredible,
one, right?
Sounds like his dad. Looks like him. It's eerie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Let me ask you about this other thing you have coming up, too, at the bitter end is the thing with the Donny Hathaway,
Donny Hathaway Live, yeah.
The whole live album.
Yeah, we're gonna perform. Well, Donny Hathaway Live has been a significant album for me since I was a teenager.
He's so overlooked, man. So brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's not overlooked by musicians. I mean, everyone. I remember even going into the late '90s and the early 2000s, you had bands like, you had Alicia Keys and Maroon 5 and all these bands. At that time, they were top charting bands. They were all talking about Donny Hathaway Live. I mean, it's, among musicians, I'm saying even in recent years, it's a seminal record. Anyway, we're going to perform it in its entirety. I believe half the record was recorded at the bitter end in New York City, where we're going to perform it, and the other half was at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. So we're bringing half the record back to its original home.
Right.
And we're going to have Mark Rivers from the Tedeschi Trucks Band. He's going to be a guest of ours, and he's going to sing, I think, 3 or 4 songs from the record. I'm going to sing a couple. And then our friend Jackson Speller, who's a teenager, is the most unbelievable voice. The kid is so talented.
Where do you find him?
He's the grandson of Bill Sims Jr., who's a local singer, guitar player, who's a huge influence on me.
Really?
True blues master, yeah. Bill Sims is a wonderful talent. And we've done a lot of shows with Bill. But Jackson's his grandson, and he introduced us to him within this last year, and the kid's voice is just spectacular.
Really?
Yeah. So we're going to have him sing a couple of songs.
Yeah.
And Mark Rivers, Jackson, it'll be our band, the Brickyard Band, so it'll be a hell of a night. It's an album that changed all of our lives, so it'll be a real treat to honor it. So Sunday, October 8th, we're going to be at the bitter end with Mark Rivers.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, to be doing that.
Second time we've done it, we did Curtis Mayfield Live, which was another record that sort of changed my life as a teenager. That record was the whole record was recorded at the bitter end as one show. And we did that with Mark Rivers as well earlier this year.
I saw Curtis once at the band shell in Central Park when he was in a wheelchair.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's where
he got great legend.
That's where he got. That's where he got injured. Was actually
Brooklyn.
Was it Celebrate Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was the Central Park summer stage that fell down
and hit him, right?
Well, it was in New York City. Anyway,
Yeah, it was. Anyway, listen, right. I don't want to hold you up.
I got to go pick up my kid from school.
Yeah, man. I don't
want to be late for that.
I can't thank you enough, and you're
so
gracious with everything.
Thanks for having me. You guys are the best.
You got it, man. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon.